Welcome, everyone. Jeff Jensen here with Trees Forever. I can't tell you how excited I am to be with you all for our Stewards of the Beautiful Land. This is our second webinar session as part of a whole series of presentations we're going to be doing over the summer here. I have some great presenters that are going to be getting into it in just a second here, but I am going to share my screen real quick. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for that. So, we have a couple of more presentations coming up here June 7th and June 21st. We had spring ephemerals that we had earlier in May, and of course that was recorded, and that is on the YouTube page as well as our landing page on the Trees Forever website. The next webinar we have is going to be landscaping for water quality, and that'll be with Josh Balk from the Black Hawk County SWCD. So we're really excited to see him. We have the website here that I want to mention. So if you go to the Trees Forever website at the Learn button and then Stewards of the Beautiful Land, you're going to come to this landing page, which is going to have the registration link for all of our upcoming webinars. So you can get registered for those. You will have to register for each one individually. And then, of course, on the right-hand side of the page, you're going to see some dates and locations for some in-person field days. And so these are going to be opportunities for you to come out and get to know other folks that might want to learn about natural landscapes and native prairies and woodlands and things like that. And you can go to any of them. Essentially, we publish them all so that no matter where you're at in the state, you can hopefully find one that's close to you. We'll be up in Dickinson County in northwest Iowa, Franklin County over more in central and eastern Iowa, Mahaska County down in southeast, and then Carroll County kind of in southwest there. And so that will be an opportunity, again, to in-person. We'll do prairie ID, invasive species removal, tree walks, and some different things like that. Those are those field days, specifically in Carroll County, then up in Hampton at Mains Grove Lodge, and then Oskaloosa, Thursday, June 22nd. Didn't get Dickinson on there. I will follow up in the email to get that included as well. So our agenda for today is basically going to be 3 presentations, just talks really, folks that are leading the stewards efforts in the state of Iowa here, Karen Wilkie with the Nature Conservancy, Christine Nemec with the Tallgrass Prairie Center, and Ann Wolf, who wears many different hats and is actually a practitioner who's been restoring her own prairie here. And so we're going to hear a little bit from each of them, and then we'll get into some Q&A. As always, if you've ever done one of these webinars, you'll know that you can see and hear us, hopefully, but we cannot see or hear you. And so the way that you'll ask questions when we come to the Q&A session is in the questions tab. That's going to be on your control panel there at home. And so find that questions tab, go ahead and type a question there. We're going to hold all questions till the end. So that is to say, we're going to let each individual go ahead and give us a little background on who they are and the organizations that they're with. And then we'll come together at the end and have an open forum on different questions that you may have. So first up is going to be Karen Wilkie with the Nature Conservancy. Then we're going to have Christine Nemec with the Tallgrass Prairie Center. And then finally, Ann Wolf with the Iowa Prairie Network, Midwest Healthy Ag. And like I said, her own practitioner doing some restored prairie on her own farm. And I'm getting a question here, so let me see. And Karen, if you want to share your screen, I'll stop sharing my screen.
I'll go ahead and begin then. My name is Karen Wilkie. Like you said, I'm the freshwater specialist for the Nature Conservancy here in Iowa. I've been at this role this is my 10th year, and I'll talk a little bit about what I do right here. Let's see if it will move forward. So for those of you who don't know about the Nature Conservancy, we are the world's largest nonprofit conservation organization. We have chapters in all 50 states and in 72 countries. And we are a science-based, nonpartisan, non-confrontational approach to increasing biodiversity and trying to tackle climate change. Here we go. Some of you may know us from, in the past we were known as the people who would go up and buy these little parcels of land that maybe a rare plant or animal species depends on, and we would preserve that small area. Well, over the years, we've sort of changed from just being these little pockets of preserves to really looking at the whole systems that these species depend on, trying to tackle climate change, looking at entire flyways and ecosystems and ecoregions that species depend on, and really trying to break through some of those systemic issues that we're facing in the world. Here is an ever-changing and always out-of-date map of where we're prioritizing, but this is the best I've got right now of some of the areas that we focus on. So we've got two big preserves, one up near Sioux City where we've got 300 bison helping us manage the largest remnant tract of prairie in the state of Iowa. That's called Broken Kettle Preserve. Highly recommend checking it out if you haven't been there yet. We also have another big preserve down kind of near Muscatine. It's called Land of the Swamp White Oak, and also highly recommend checking that out. It's the most biodiverse area in the state of Iowa. I think 80% of the biodiversity of Iowa is found there. Really cool fens, bogs, bottomland forest, just a neat area. We've got a bunch of other preserves sprinkled around the state, but those are two really big ones that I'll mention. And then of course, we're working with private landowners trying to get conservation on private land. Most of Iowa is privately owned, so that's where we can get conservation. So what I do for the Nature Conservancy, my biggest job duty is just restoring wetlands, especially on private lands. And so I do everything from identifying potential wetland restoration sites through survey, design, working with landowners, contracts, permits, and then hiring an excavation contractor to actually do the excavation. So the wetlands that I've been focusing on the last 10 years are called Oxbow wetland restorations. And basically they're old river meanders that have gotten cut off from the main stem of a river or creek. A lot of these over the years have filled in with sediment, as you can see in these pictures. By 2008, it's completely filled in from sediment and erosion filling in that wetland. And so it's not really performing like a wetland anymore. So we just come in and restore it back to its full function by digging out that excess sediment and tying that with conservation in the adjacent farm fields or wherever else that sediment was coming from to ensure the longevity of that wetland restoration. Here's kind of a on the ground view of that same oxbow that we restored. So pretty simple practice, easy to sell because it's not in ag production. There's no management changes from landowner. It's in marginal land along the stream that gets flooded anyways. And we are seeing really great benefits from this restoration for water quality, intercepting tile coming off the farm fields. And we're seeing 50% reduction in nitrates coming off of those farm fields, just being allowed to be intercepted by these wetlands. Great for floodwater storage and reducing flooding downstream. And of course, great for biodiversity and wildlife habitat. One of the things I did in the last 2 years was create an Oxbow Restoration Toolkit with, you can see all the logos at the bottom. Many other partners helped us put that together. But basically, this is a really common practice that can be done across Iowa, and there was only a handful of us actually doing them. So we wanted to make sure all of the conservation providers across Iowa could have the same tools that we have to restore oxbows with their clients and customers and landowners that they're working with. So this is kind of a step-by-step guide on how to restore oxbows. Great for the landowner to know the steps that they're going to be going through as we're working with them. But like I said, also great for training people that are working in the conservation field on how to restore these with landowners that they're working with. We also did a training too, and that's recorded on our website. So if you just search TNC Oxbows Iowa, you'll find all those resources if you're interested in geeking out about wetlands like I do. I also help a lot with monitoring our success. As I mentioned, we are a science-based organization, and so we want to see and prove the benefits that this practice can have. And if it's not a beneficial practice, then we need to be working somewhere else or doing something else, right? So we do a lot of fish surveys and macroinvertebrate and other type of wildlife surveys to monitor the before and after benefits that we're seeing with these restorations. We've done extensive water quality monitoring to show the water quality benefits that these can provide. And we're also working with hydrologists to quantify the flood storage benefits. So trying to look at all aspects. Of course, we cannot do this alone. Nature Conservancy only has about 20 staff across the whole state of Iowa. And so we work very closely with lots of different governmental, non-governmental, ag, conservation, you name it, partners to work together, bring different expertise, bring different funding sources together to get the job done that is needed. And so we all bring different perspectives and expertise to the table to really have a well-rounded project that is looking at all aspects and, having the best bang for our conservation buck. I do a lot of outreach, such as this webinar today, or field days, events, signage, newsletters, websites, you name it, trying to promote not only the conservation practices that we're doing, trying to get other people to do it, promote the benefits and research that we're doing, and then also try to get other conservation professionals up to speed and, share lessons learned with other watershed projects, things like that. So it's a very fun and diverse, kind of well-rounded job. Every day looks different, and I love that part of it. Not super fun, but definitely also needed is the grant writing and bringing in funding for projects. We have a philanthropy team that works with our donors to bring in funding since we are a nonprofit, but we also apply for grants through foundations or through the government. And so that's another big part of the job is writing reports and trying to bring in funding for the next batch of projects. So a little bit about my background. I got my education at Augustana College. I double majored in geography and psychology, which at the time people thought was a very weird combination, but I use psychology every day in my job working with people, trying to figure out what motivates them to put conservation on the ground. I did grad school down at Southern Illinois University, and I specialize in water resource management. I started out with a few internships. I started with AmeriCorps, and if you're not familiar with AmeriCorps, it's really great stepping stone between school and a job, a way to kind of get in the door with a big organization, get some experience, build up your resume, and just get a lot of different on-the-ground experiences that will help you in the future. So here's some details about AmeriCorps, but you can Google it. Might be out of date. Maybe they have different amounts for funding and stuff, but pretty good deal. And where I did it was at Cypress Creek National Wildlife Refuge with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And it was very fun. I was mostly doing environmental education, helping develop educational programs for school groups, leading canoe tours, doing vegetation surveys, and handling invasive species. Then another internship program that I would highly recommend is called the Student Conservation Association. I did this afterwards. It's very similar to AmeriCorps, except it's just conservation focused. AmeriCorps can also be, in the schools or doing other types of things. This is just conservation, environmental field focused. So similar benefits and, those types of things. I did mine at Coralville Lake with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And here I was mostly working outside pretty much every day, removing invasive species, doing prescribed burns, monitoring wildlife, doing some outreach and education and volunteer days. So it was very fun and just got me a lot of really great experience and good references for future jobs. Then I worked at a little nonprofit. It was my first real job. It's called River Action in Davenport, and they focus on bringing attention back to the river by having good access, doing outreach for all the parks and stuff that are by the rivers, having really great bike paths along the river. And so I was mostly doing 100% of my time was grant writing. Again, was not my favorite thing, but was a really good skill to build up. So all of these different experiences are bringing me different expertise, all of which I am using in my job today. But it helped me figure out, okay, grant writing is important, but I don't want to do it all day, every day. Being outside was really fun. Also, don't want to do that all day, every day. There are some days I just need to sit and relax in front of a computer. So it was good to have all those different experiences. And then my last position before TNC was with the Soil and Water Conservation District as a watershed coordinator. I was mostly doing urban conservation stuff, but very similar to what I'm doing now, working with private landowners. Oh, I guess that's it. So that was my background and a little bit about what I do. It sounds like we'll take questions at the end unless there's any burning questions right now. And there's my contact info. If anybody ever wants to reach out or has questions, feel free to do it that way too if you don't feel comfortable asking during this presentation.
Fantastic. Thank you, Karen. Appreciate that. And we'll be sure to get your contact information in the email that we send out to folks with the link for the recording as well. Next up, we have Christine Nemec with the Tallgrass Prairie Center. And give me 3 shakes of a lamb's tail here, and I'm actually going to share my screen and some slides.
Now that we have that established, we have the first slide. If you can go to the next slide. So I worked at the University of Northern Iowa Tallgrass Prairie Center for about 8 years. The mission of the Tallgrass Prairie Center is to empower people to value and restore resilient, diverse tallgrass prairie. We are a department at UNI. We're about a mile west of the Dome. If you've ever been to any kind of event at the Dome, you can envision where we're at. And this is what we look like in the summer. We have 7 permanent staff. In the summer, we also have additional help. We have 2 11-month AmeriCorps members and 2 summer AmeriCorps members, and also student workers. We have many different partners and funders. This is only some of them. This is a lot of our ag and highway people. Trees Forever is also one of our partners and funders. The Tallgrass Prairie provides people with many benefits. On the right, you can see some actual Tallgrass Prairie root specimens. See how dense and spongy they are? Well, that's what makes them so valuable. It's not so much, well, there's a lot of value to the above ground part, but those dense roots are able to improve water quality, reduce erosion. They're just really valuable. They also reduce the spread of invasive species. The prairie also provides habitat for bees and butterflies and birds, mammals, and also some economic value. For example, you can hay prairie. Iowa used to be mostly prairie, but now only less than 0.1% of the entire prairie remains. And what's left are these little patches in a sea of agriculture. Daryl Smith, the founder of the Tallgrass Prairie Center, likes to say, if you can picture a 1,000 piece puzzle, like a jigsaw puzzle, out of those 1,000 pieces, 1 piece is left. That's the equivalent of 0.1%. So our mission is try to restore some of this prairie back to the landscape for all those benefits that help not only animals and the environment, but also people. But you can envision why it's important because there's so little left. To do that, we have 4 programs. We have research and restoration, prairie on farms, plant materials, and the roadside program. So I'll briefly go over what each of those entail. The research and restoration program is led by Dr. Justin Meissen here at the center. And his goal is to conduct field experiments to discover new and better prairie reconstruction techniques. So he will plant different plots, for example, and he'll plant some of those plots in the spring versus fall, or he'll mow them at different frequencies or use different kinds of seed mixes. So he uses really practical applied techniques that people actually use and tries to figure out the best reconstruction techniques. So that's what his research entails. Prairie on Farms is led by Andy Olson. Some of you may have heard of the STRIPS project at Iowa State, where they do a lot of research to look at the benefits of planting strips of prairie, about 30 to 120 foot wide strips of prairie directly within farmland. And they're finding a lot of benefits. It helps reduce soil erosion, provides habitat, improves water quality, all those benefits you get from prairie. And a lot of farmers like to reduce erosion especially. But our role is to help find demonstration sites near Cedar Falls and to help host field days to teach farmers how they can benefit by planting prairie directly within their cropland. At the center, we do not sell seed, but what we do is collect seed from prairie remnants. In other words, remnants is prairie that has never been plowed. So these plants are adapted to Iowa. They've been here for a long time. So we're maintaining that genetic heritage, that integrity of the prairie plants. We take that seed and we grow it here at the center through the plant materials program. And then we provide that seed that we collect from the seed production plots to commercial growers, and they sell the seed. So what we do is we grow that foundation seed, and then the growers take care of the rest. But we help maintain that genetic heritage. We want to maintain plants that are really well adapted to Iowa. The roadside program is the program I'm responsible for here at the center. It's our oldest program. It was established in 1988 because of legislation from the Iowa State Legislature that provided funding and support through the Living Roadway Trust Fund. It's administered through the Iowa DOT. There's funds for different entities like Trees Forever or my program, counties, cities can apply for funds to help support the planting of prairie plants and roadsides and the smart use of herbicides to control weeds or reduce erosion. It's really a strategic approach, an ecological approach to managing roadsides as opposed to just spraying all the weeds in sight, trying to figure out what's most important to control. So some part of it is about planting prairie plants in the roadside, and part of it is just trying to figure out how to manage the rest of the roadside that's not in prairie plants in an ecological way. So what I do to help support this program in my role, I organize 2 annual meetings. One is a roadside conference that'll be here at UNI in Cedar Falls in October. We also have a winter meeting that's just for the roadside managers, but the roadside conference is open to the public, anyone interested in roadside vegetation. I also get a large grant from the Federal Highways Administration to provide prairie seed for the roadside programs. It's free to them. They just have to provide the labor and the equipment to plant the seed. So part of my role is grant management. There's a lot of data collection. They have to show where they're planting the seed. So I have to manage paperwork for all these counties. There's around 40 counties each year that pick up seed. So as part of my role is organizing that annual seed pickup where they come get their seed, the paperwork. I also do outreach, webinars such as this, or maybe attending conferences to encourage people to consider getting a program for their county. So this map shows which counties do have roadside managers. This is a person on staff whose role is to manage the roadsides using these ecological techniques. So you can see about half of the counties have a roadside manager. And this shows which department they're in. So the orange is secondary roads. Often they're located in secondary roads. It makes it easier to communicate with the engineer on all those road projects they're involved with. About a third are located in the green counties and conservation department. There's one where they're combination, they're kind of in both secondary roads and conservation, and there's about 6 that are independent. That means they report directly to the Board of Supervisors. So I mostly help support the counties, and Trees Forever helps encourage cities. They're more involved with the cities. That's why my map just shows counties. But the really neat thing about county roadside programs is at the local level, even just one citizen or a group of citizens can make a difference. So some of these counties, it's because of one really passionate citizen who gathered local support and approached their Board of Supervisors and explained why it would be good to have a program. So each county manages maybe 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 acres of roadside. So even just a handful of people can influence how 2 to 4, 5,000 acres of public land, the roadside in a county, is managed. So that's kind of the cool thing I like about helping support the counties, because it's fun working with these people who get excited. Sometimes it's not the public, sometimes it's the county engineer or the conservation board director. They approach me, they're really excited, they want to get a program, and they're able to build support and get it through and affect how a lot of land is managed. A lot of roadsides are managed in their county. So at the end, I'll give my contact information. If you want to learn more, you're always welcome to reach out. If you look at this map and you say, wait, why doesn't my county have a roadside manager? Well, I can help you with the next steps, getting the information you might need, or connect you with people who can help you think about getting a roadside program in your county. I'll mention a couple of the projects at the Tallgrass Prairie Center. One is Irvin Prairie. This is a restoration that's open to the public. A woman named Kathy Irvin donated about 300 acres of prime farmland near Dysart to be restored to prairie in memory of her late husband. They both loved prairie. They wanted future generations to be able to appreciate prairie. So we've planted 77 acres so far. It's open to the public, has around 3 miles of mowed trails and a porta potty. So there's the address, 1173 55th Street. It's on a gravel road. You're welcome to navigate out there and visit anytime from dawn to dusk. It's a beautiful place in the summer. There's so much flowering, all sorts of birds. It's really cool. Another project is the Prairie Roots Project, where we grow these prairie roots, give them to nature centers to display. We have roots banners that schools or nature centers can request, life-size banners. This just shows where within the country that people have requested these. So it's not just prairie states, but some other states that want to display these. AmeriCorps was mentioned. We are a host site for AmeriCorps members. They help us collect plant data. They help us manage our seed production plots, do outreach, all sorts of fun activities. We have both summer and 11-month AmeriCorps members. So if you know anyone who might benefit, you can let me know. Just a few examples of resources we have for the public. One is a prairie coloring book that one of our members created. This is the website where you can go and download this coloring book for free. It has all sorts of plants, some insects, some birds that you can color. It's great for adults if you want to relieve stress, or for older children, or any child, I guess, if they don't mind not being very detailed. And the nice thing about this is too that this is one of our AmeriCorps member projects, which shows what they can do. And they consulted with us, so all the plants ID is very accurate. It's not only fun to color, but it's all really accurate as far as the natural history information, the identification information. And hot off the press, just within the last week, one of our other AmeriCorps members created these updated maps of the trails around the UNI campus. Some people don't realize we have miles and miles of trails that go through prairie and woodland. We have a lot of nice natural areas, so the public's welcome to explore those trails. Just go to the Tallgrass Prairie Center site and look at the Maps tab. We also have an interactive map where you can click on different dots, and it shows you different images around the center itself. So it's more related just to the center part of campus. It's called a story map, where you can do it like a virtual tour of campus. And one of our most common or popular resources, people want to know, where can I get seed? Who will manage or plant or burn my prairie? So you can also go to our website and look for the Iowa seed and service providers. That's what you're looking for on the left-hand side of our homepage. And then you can download a directory of different providers that can help you with prairie. So that's my contact information. I guess for the professional part, I didn't provide slides, but I can let you know, I started out my career at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the district office in Omaha, Nebraska. I got in because I took a GIS class in grad school, and the instructor happened to work at the Corps. And she knew of a 5-month position open, so I took that 5-month temporary position, then I got a 2-year internship, and then I was permanent. So I'd recommend anyone who's thinking about environmental careers, you'll often have to start out with those temporary positions, but you can learn a lot and get into some really cool places by even just taking a series of temporary positions. So that's where I spent the bulk of my career. Then I also went to grad school and a 2-year position at the USDA in Brookings, and now I'm at the center for 8 years. So that was my path. Okay, and I guess I'll take questions at the end.
Wonderful, fantastic, Christine. Thank you so much for sharing. And this is going to be, here we go, Ann Wolf. Ann wears many different hats, but Ann, I'm going to let you describe all of those different hats. Go ahead, Ann.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ann Wolf. I serve as co-program director with Dr. Rob Wallace with Midwest Healthy Ag. We've been collaborating together for the last 4 years with a team of research agroecologists, agronomists, working on a grant-supported project for health and climate in the Midwest region. And it's a socio-anthropological, data-driven program, and I was pleased to be a part of it, and we're still part of it. We're going to be writing some more grants coming after the first of the year. You can visit that website and learn all about it and some of the published white papers we have and the reports that we've created over the last 3.5 years at midwesthealthyag.org. Prior to that, I served as executive director with Iowa Heartland Resource Conservation and Development. That's an RCD, and they were created many years ago through the NRCS USDA. So that was sort of a stepping stone into working with a team of research scientists here the last 4 years. I live in Des Moines. I'm going to kind of throw my education here as I kind of speak. I have a bachelor's degree from the University of Iowa in fine art, believe it or not, but I picked up a minor in psychology, and I have a master's degree in philanthropy and nonprofit development. So I do a lot of work with nonprofit organizations, as well as co-program directing with Midwest Healthy Ag. I also work with a company out of Omaha, Nebraska, Strawhecker Nonprofit Services, and I'm working on a grant program with a rural hospital there in the state of Nebraska. I am a member at large with the Iowa Prairie Network. I serve on many boards here in the state of Iowa and nationally in agriculture and prairie restoration, sustainability. Two of the main boards I'm very active with right now are Women in Ag Leadership through Iowa State University and Iowa Women in Ag. So again, I belong to a lot of boards and have for many, many years. I also am a farmer and a landowner. My primary address is in Des Moines, but I own a 300-acre family farm in Jackson County, Iowa, within a mile of the Mississippi and Maquoketa River confluence. And I have a very large stream that runs through my pasture ground that flows right into the Maquoketa and right into the Mississippi. I'm from Eastern Iowa, so I'm a Mississippi River rat, proud to say it. So I'm very fond of the Mississippi and love going back to my farm, of which I will be at for the next 2 days, doing a lot of continuing chores and restoration work. I just did a prairie burn on 38 acres this a couple of weeks ago, working with the NRCS. And my prairie and grasses and CRP programs have been in the NRCS programs for 12 years on average. So I'm going into the second phase of these programs. I've done many prairie burns. This most recent burn that I did on a 38.6 acre field, I collaborated with volunteer fire people around Miles, Iowa, which is where my farm is located, or it's roughly 9 miles directly south of Bellevue. And that was a great opportunity if you're a private landowner and you need some volunteer help, burning a large field. I have personally burned my smaller fields myself with drip torches and everything else. But it was nice to have the collaborative effort of working with volunteer fire department in these small communities. And it's a great training experience for them to work with their volunteer and staff, coordinating burns and whatever needs to be done. I have a 1.8 acre wetland that the NRCS helped me create 12 years ago. And as was mentioned earlier, I think Karen mentioned it, I've had to have this wetland dredged a couple of times because of the silt runoff, but it does do what it's supposed to do, collecting runoff from adjacent fields. I've got a lot of stories on that. One of the things I continually fight on my CRP acres is the invasive weed species, and that goes with also including herbicide spraying. I'm certified through Iowa State University with private landowner herbicide application, and keeping these invasive species under control is an ongoing effort. So there's never a dull moment in working with these large fields, and some of the spraying works and some of it doesn't. The burning of the fields is a great way to control the invasive species, but it's not an end all to control it. So it's an ongoing effort. And so that being said, I also have 110 acres of old growth forest. Of course, I've got the bur oak, you name it, it's there. And that's a challenge too, trying to keep the trees healthy. And if there's a blight going through or a storm goes through, the limbs and everything else that fall down that you have to go over to your farm area and clear off. But I do have barns and I do have a cabin there. So when I go to the farm, I certainly have a very nice place to stay when I have to go out and do all my field and crop work. My farm is a conventional type farm. My grandmother purchased it back in 1943. As a land investment, and I now fully own and control all aspects of the farm operation. So that being said, I've been in conservation for a long, long time. I've enjoyed working with the FSA USDA office out of Maquoketa, Iowa. Great group of people. Can't give them enough accolades for the knowledge and experience they've been able to pass along to me. So, that's kind of it in a nutshell. If anyone has any questions later on, I'd be more than happy to answer anything anybody might want to share with me. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Ann. You stole my line. That's it in a nutshell. That's usually what I say. So good enough. I appreciate it.
That's it in a bur oak nutshell, right?
I like that. So interestingly enough, one of the reasons folks might be wondering why we had our presenters just give a little bit about their history and background is I am always fascinated at the individuals that I meet that work either in conservation or with water quality or within trees, and because it's also varied. I came from a communication background, never in a million years saw myself being in the position that I am today, helping to plant trees and advocate for trees and things like that. And so thanks to each and every one of you, certainly, for sharing that little bit of your journey and your background. And so let's take some questions. And question for Christine. Christine, how does one go about getting a banner? Those are amazing. Tell us a little bit about the banners, Christine.
Sure, just email me and I can set you up with our community engagement coordinator, and she can let you know what the latest is on availability or if there's any cost. I think there might be a cost for shipping sometimes, I'm not sure, but she can give you all the details. So just email me.
Excellent. Karen, if you're with us at all, question here about why oxbows as a method for improved water quality. Any insight that you can share with us there?
Yeah, very very good question. We started working with Oxbows for this little federally endangered fish called the Topeka shiner. So it's more of a habitat wildlife standpoint. But, you know, Iowa struggles with water quality issues, as everybody knows. And we're just looking at creative ways to create natural infrastructure that will naturally clean the water. And so, especially in Iowa and in the area that I'm working in, north central Iowa, there's a lot of tile drainage already going into these oxbows, basically, or it was going into the creek and the oxbows right there. So we just thought, let's take a look and see what that is, what that water quality benefit is. And so we did pretty extensive research, and that's continuing to build so that we can have a bigger set of data to pull from. But like I said, what we found was about 50% removal of nitrate specifically. But I'm sure there's other water quality indicators that are being naturally filtered and removed just through the vegetation, the soils, macroinvertebrates, all that cool stuff going on that just naturally filters the water. So we actually worked to get Oxbows added to the Iowa nutrient reduction strategy. And what that did was it opened a whole nother big pool of funding that could be used for Oxbow restoration. So now it's not just a wildlife practice, but it's a water quality practice. And so there's a whole nother group of, you know, conservation professionals and funding that focus more on the water quality side of it. And now they're interested in this practice too. And we're getting those wildlife and storage benefits along with it, right? And so that was our kind of big push, just to one, raise an awareness of this very simple practice, very cost effective, permanent on the landscape, not something we have to convince farmers to do year after year, that is having really tangible, multiple benefits.
Okay, great. Thank you, Karen, for sharing. Absolutely. Christine, question here. About half of the counties have roadside programs, half don't. Why? That's maybe an open-ended question. I'm not sure that you can answer for all of them, but
I would say there's probably a few main reasons. One is maybe they just don't know much about the program. I think that's not as common now. We have an e-newsletter. We do webinars once or twice a year. Everyone's invited, like all the members of the boards of supervisors, engineers, so they all get information about the program. One reason might be there might not be enough political support. I think sometimes there's concerns. It kind of varies. The culture kind of varies from county to county, but some farmers don't like having prairie plants on the roadside by their farm. It's, you know, it kind of contradicts the way they kind of want to manage. They want the roadside to be nice and neat and mowed. They're afraid that the prairie plants might plug tile lines or invade the farmland. So that's some concerns I'm hearing from some farmers. Not everyone, certainly, but some farmers in some counties just don't like the idea of having prairie plants on the roadside. So that's sometimes a concern. Then finally, another concern is just, it's just not a priority. I mean, the county has to find money to hire a roadside manager. They might not see it as a priority. Well, why don't we just keep managing the same way we always have? Like, why? They don't understand that usually in the long term, at least those counties that do collect data, they found in the long term they save money, but there is that initial investment of hiring the roadside manager, getting equipment. But the nice thing is the Living Roadway Trust Fund can offset some of those costs too. So I think it's mostly those reasons why some counties don't have a roadside manager.
fascinating, interesting. So it sounds like dispelling some of those myths could go a long way. And then again, rallying support and just advocating for those places that we love and those landscapes that we want. Excellent. There's a question here about Inflation Reduction Act and how might that funding impact your work in Iowa? And I guess that's open to anybody that might be utilizing any of that funding that's either proposed or coming down the pipe.
Will you repeat that question one more time?
Yeah, the question was about Inflation Reduction Act. There's dollars available and how that might impact any of your work here in Iowa. And that might have been a softball lobbed up for me because certainly Trees Forever will be applying for Inflation Reduction Act dollars through the U.S. Forest Service for over the next 5 years to work with communities to build capacity to plant trees, but really manage their trees as well. Because as we all know, it's not enough to just focus on establishment, whether it's a prairie planting, a tree planting, whatever the case may be. that ongoing maintenance has to be part of the conversation, and then caring for those prairie plants or those trees until they're up on their own, and we can reduce that level of maintenance. But it's never no maintenance, certainly. So that's what could potentially be a boon for Trees Forever, and then more importantly, communities throughout the state of Iowa that would have available funding not only to Trees Forever, but also to the Iowa DNR as well. So great question there. Next question is, okay, I have a 1 acre plot on my small acreage that I want to dedicate to pollinator tallgrass. I've talked to the NRCS and the DNR, and I've gotten some information. Are there other resources that I can contact for ways to proceed? And anything beyond NRCS and DNR when it comes to pollinator habitat? Christine, Karen, if you have any thoughts as well. I'll put a plug in for the Tallgrass Prairie Center and their website, because not only do they have their seed calculator, but they have a listing of contractors, of seed providers. So there's a wealth of information there. I'm going to be quiet for a moment and open up to anybody else. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll start off. When I was given the opportunity to put a portion of my farm ground in pollinator, CRP pollinator, I heli equip, I've got it all on the farm. I certainly worked with the FSA office out of Maquoketa, and then of course that flowed into NRCS and so on and so forth. But the NRCS FSA office did supply me with, vendors that they have on their list. They can't recommend anything specifically. But I got a list of vendors and people who do certain activities in, field preservation, turning it back into CRP from row crop. And it was a wonderful resource for me to determine, just calling around to see who could do what it was I needed to do based on the program I had enrolled in for CRP, heli, pollinator, equip, stream bank restoration, wetland, all of it. And that was a wonderful resource. And then I could actually work with some of the vendors that the NRCS offered. And then I worked with them directly, Welter Seed, one over there in eastern Iowa. And then they were in compliance, and they worked with the NRCS, and the NRCS, well, we're going to put this field doing this on her farm. So then the seed company matches up. Okay, well, we'll work with everybody across the country and put a bag of seed together, or 2 or 3. And let me tell you, prairie seed is not cheap, but NRCS does do a cost share with you in purchasing these very large bags of native seed, just to be prepared for that. So in some respects, if you can enroll with a program through the NRCS or FSA or whatever, there's that cost share. And because prairie seed is expensive, I would encourage anybody to go that route, because that's where you get that share in the expense. And it's really great. I mean, I've got all these prairie seeds that came from all over the country, and NRCS approved, and so did Welter Seed. So, I mean, it's just one of those things. It's not necessarily native just to the state of Iowa, but I have seed from Washington State, from New York State, all approved by the NRCS per their recommended recipe for the seed that they wanted planted on my CRP plots. Just letting you know.
Sure. And Welter Seed, they're a great company. They have a seed mix called the Tom Wall mix. Tom Wall's an agroforester out of Wapello, Iowa, chestnuts and all sorts of things. And so
yeah,
he
it's
has
a great place.
Mix. And so, yeah, fantastic.
I'll be honest with you, it was a sticker shock with buying that seed. But fortunately, like I said, the NRC did a 50% cost share or whatever they're willing to do. But, it does work.
This is Karen. I'll add something real quick. Depending what part of the state you're in, the Iowa Soybean Association actually has funding for seed, and they would do all of the lining up contractor and seeding and everything for you, 100% cost, if you are in Rusty Patch Bumblebee area of the state. So you just have to check in with them, or check the map on the Fish and Wildlife Service website to see if you're within the priority areas of the Rusty Patch Bumblebee, but that could open that door for you. So reach out to me if that is applicable and you want me to get you in touch with them.
Great resource. Thank you for sharing that, Karen. That's wonderful news.
And I just want to add, I agree. I just want to add, when I started putting in pollinator habitat, 12, 14 years ago, since that time, there's a lot more resources, just like, Karen had mentioned, there's a lot more resources now for different programs to get involved with. I'm right now committed with the NRCS different programs to get involved with, like Iowa Soybean Association. That really wasn't an option for me a few years ago when I was just stepping into this, doing this. So I think that's all good news. That's all great stuff. There's more talk now than there was, when I was stepping into doing CRP set aside.
Excellent. I want to point out to folks that if you explore just a little bit on your GoToWebinar control panel, we have a couple of handouts. And so one of the handouts is actually bios of all of our speakers, so you can learn just a little bit about them and their history. So wanted to point that out. And then we have some flyers for some of those in-person field days that are coming up here starting in June. And so wanted to be sure you saw that. We'll also include those in the follow-up email that'll contain the link for the YouTube recorded version of this, but just wanted to point that out. Back to questions now. A question here that says they have a problem with phosphorus runoff. How do we deal with this problem? Is it possible to succeed? What will it take to succeed? Anybody want to take a shot at that, or should I jump in? I'm gonna take a shot at it. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. So when we're talking phosphorus, Ken, we're really primarily talking about soil. So phosphorus is going to be attached to those soil particles. And so as that soil moves from our landscape into, let's say, our streams, that's where we get a lot of this nutrient loading regarding phosphorus. Typically nitrogen is more soluble, and so that's going to flow with the water. But the good news there is that if we can keep sedimentation under control, keep the soil where it belongs, we can go quite a ways to making some improvements in phosphorus, or reductions, I should say. So if we think about keeping the soil in place, what are some of those practices that to help to reduce disturbance of the soil? Certainly any of your perennial, either conservation plantings through prairie, they're functional landscapes, remember that, or agroforestry, any of those perennial type of systems that are going to incorporate more roots into the ground all year long, they're going to help to hold that soil in place, certainly, and help to reduce some of that phosphorus loading that might be contributing to some of our waters there. Any other thoughts from others?
I think you nailed it.
And by the way, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right, folks? You saw the pictures from Christine, those prairie roots. I mean, some of those are one single plant or maybe 2 or 3 plants. And look at the size of those roots, and imagine a prairie, which is just thousands of those plants. I mean, it just blows my mind. And so that's why we can get some real benefits out of having all those roots filter that water. So, okay, I'll stop and get off my soapbox here. So next question. We want to know. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to quickly mention those roots are really extensive. I think I mentioned the concern about tile lines, but Iowa State and us, we've done videos of tile lines and they don't plug tile lines. The roots barely penetrate. They're not strong enough to penetrate tile lines. I just want to point that out. Sometimes people see them, oh my gosh, they're going to mess everything up. They don't.
Another myth busted. We need to have you back, Christine, Mythbusters prairie version. That'd be fun. Seeing some Mary Ellen here says, seeing some damage to trees from maybe chemical drift from row crop fields. Any studies on long-term impact of these chemicals, either herbicides, insecticides? Oh boy, that was kind of a tree question, and so maybe that'll be thrown to me. More to come. I know there's more research going on. Oak tatters, I think, is sometimes referenced as that issue, but there's also oak dying, which is another issue that I know is being investigated. Incidentally, not that this is a good answer, Mary Ellen, but we are going to be featuring T-Vone Feely, Iowa DNR Forest Health Specialist, for a webinar coming up here on June 29th. And so he will be talking about some of those forest threats, and he would be a fantastic resource to ask that very question to. And so I apologize for putting you off, Mary Ellen, but well, maybe that'll be a reason for you to come back on the 29th and join us then, but we'll look to get that maybe question answered either by T-Vone or somebody theirs, but that's a great question. Well, let's see here. I think we've come to the end of our questions. Any others from folks out there in the audience? Speak now or forever hold your peace. I'd like to thank Karen and Christine. When we put this together, it was kind of something new and unique. We wanted to kind of feature some of those stewards who are doing a great job leading the charge with native landscapes or water quality. And so thank you for that. Wanted to incorporate the history. It's amusing to me, I guess, the path that everybody takes to get where they're at. And so thank you for indulging that. Mentioned that we do have our Woodland Legacy. This is a webinar that's actually coming up in a week. And we're going to have University of Minnesota Professor Emeritus Gary Johnson talking about community gravel beds. And so a lot of folks want to plant trees, and a lot of times seedlings or smaller sized trees are more cost effective, but we have these really tight windows sometimes of just a month or two in which we can plant trees. And so he'll be talking about strategies to extend that growing season and to actually grow great roots using gravel beds or pea beds, pea gravel beds, pea rock beds, pardon me. And so stay tuned for that. You can get registered on the Trees Forever website. We have an events calendar, and that's listed there. So join us in a week for that. Any last questions that came through? No. So we're going to wrap things up. Again, this is going to be recorded. We'll send the link out to folks, as well as some of the information from our great presenters here today. I want to thank you all once again. Hey, have a great day, everyone. It's a beautiful day. Go outside and enjoy the weather. Take
Thank
care,
you.
everyone. Bye.